Hi, my name is Vanessa van Dijk, and in this video we are looking into the real truth of hyaluronic acid so that we understand where its claims are coming from, who can use hyaluronic acid, who has to be a bit more careful, what are the benefits of hyaluronic acid, and if you need to apply it to dry or damp skin. And for that I found a very interesting experiment that I want to share with you as well. Now overall I want to share with you my research. I want to keep my main focus towards topical hyaluronic acid products, such as for example hyaluronic acid toner, essence or serum, not so much a moisturizer because the formulation is different, and I want to add my point of view to this as well. Now I'm going to leave this video as an open discussion. If you have anything else to add, you're more than welcome to leave it in the comments down below. Now let's look into Leslie Bowman's Cosmeceuticals and Cosmetic Ingredients book. This is an amazing book if you want to learn more about the major skincare ingredients. It is already a few years old, but when it comes to hyaluronic acid, not much has changed based on what I'm trying to emphasize in this specific video. There are some new studies, but they are not really relevant to the point that I'm trying to make. Overall, I believe that this book is where most information are coming from. So when talking to dermatologists, doctors in general, seeing influencers online, or even some articles and from skincare companies. If they are not getting it from the book, which you can identify based on how they are trying to explain the benefits of hyaluronic acid, it's coming from the research pages themselves. And so what I want to point out here is that it's coming from the same sources. Therefore, you primarily hear always the same ongoing claims about hyaluronic acid. So let's look into this a bit deeper. She has an entire chapter on hyaluronic acid, as you can see, and it's being categorized as a humectant and that it has anti-aging properties as well as a moisturizer. Now we need to understand what humectants are so that we understand what hyaluronic acid is supposed to be and how it's supposed to help us with our skin, because hyaluronic acid is a humectant, so we need to understand the background on humectants. And she has an entire chapter on humectants as well, which you can see right here. Now, humectants are water-soluble materials with high water absorption capabilities, able to attract water from the atmosphere if the humidity is greater than 80% and from the underlying epidermis. Although humectants may draw water from the environment to help hydrate the skin, in low humid conditions they may take water from the deeper epidermis and dermis, resulting in increased skin dryness. For this reason, they work better when combined with occlusives. So right here you can see I have underlined that the humidity needs to be greater than 80%, which is extremely high. So this is at the point where it starts to get foggy or slightly rains. So this is how humid it has to be for the humectants to draw water from the environment. And they point out 2 times May, so I'm going to leave it open to you as well because I'm not 100% sure to what this refers to. And when it comes to occlusives, it basically refers to ingredients that help to seal it. So this can be petrolatum jelly, this can be silicones and certain oils. Then below it mentions that humectants can cause an almost immediate improvement in skin texture because they draw water into the skin, causing a slight swelling of the stratum corneum that gives the perception of smoother skin with fewer wrinkles. Humectants, by inducing swelling, can temporarily give the user the perception of increased skin firmness. So the effects that you're getting from humectants, as pretty they may be, they are only temporary. So if you want to maintain those effects, you have to always keep on going with that specific product that gives you the effect so that you can maintain it, otherwise it's going to decrease. So now we are ready to look into hyaluronic acid because now we know what humectants are supposed to do. So hyaluronic acid is a sugar that can bind over 1,000 times its weight in water. That's one of the claims that you often can hear. And it is responsible for giving the skin its plumpness and volume. Then if you're looking into the history, it mentions that hyaluronic acid, which appears freely in the dermis and is more concentrated in areas where the cells are less densely packed, is an important dermal component responsible for attracting water and giving the dermis its volume. So you can think of hyaluronic acid like a little cushion. Every time where you have a little gap in the skin, doesn't matter if it's deeper in the skin or just on the upper layers of the skin, it's going to fill those gaps with hyaluronic acid so that it adds hydration to the skin and that the skin looks an overall more plump. And this again has the effect of the reduction of fine lines and wrinkles. Now, to understand if hyaluronic acid is penetrating into the skin or not when it comes to topical use, right here it mentions that conflicting reports claim that smaller sizes of hyaluronic acid may penetrate into the epidermis when used in the proper formulations. In the author's knowledge, there are no published studies demonstrating the penetration of topical hyaluronic acid into the dermis. So it's basically referring to that if you're going to apply a topical hyaluronic acid product to the skin, that it can penetrate deep into the skin. Because naturally within our skin we have hyaluronic acid components in the deeper layers of the skin as well as upper layers of the skin. Now, the studies that have been done basically demonstrated that hyaluronic acid is able to some extent, depending on the size, to absorb into the skin, but only on the upper layers of the skin, or it's sitting on top of the skin surface. But so far, as of my understanding, there aren't really any studies that are demonstrating that it can penetrate deeper into the skin than just the uppermost layers. Then if you're going to look into this a bit further when it comes to topical uses, right here it mentions that topical use of hyaluronic acid has been shown to improve skin hydration. It functions as a skin hydrating agent best when used in a humid environment. In a dry environment, it can draw water from the skin into the hyaluronic acid, thus dehydrating the skin. For this reason, hyaluronic acid should be used in combination with an occlusive ingredient in a dry environment. Individuals with oily skin types have sufficient sebum to impart occlusive properties. Therefore, those with oily skin types can use hyaluronic acid in any environment, but people with dry skin should not use it in a dry environment unless the hyaluronic acid is combined with an occlusive agent. Applying hyaluronic acid to the skin in a humid environment attracts water to the skin and can result in an immediate improvement of wrinkles, and the effect is lessened in a low humidity environment because there is less water in the atmosphere to draw to the skin. So overall, what this is basically demonstrating is that if you have dry skin, you live in a dry humidity environment, you have to work with an occlusive afterwards. So again, this may be petrolatum, jelly, silicones, or certain oils. However, if you have oily skin, this is not needed because your skin is naturally producing enough oil, which kind of works like an occlusive. So your oily skin is able to hold on to hyaluronic acid in that specific case. However, if you have dry skin, because you're lacking of oil, this isn't possible, and then it's going to either evaporate or it's going to take the water from the deeper layers of the skin. Therefore, again, whenever I'm referring to my videos and telling you that the moisturizer is an optional step, I'm getting that information from this part right here because it isn't always necessary. And I'm referring to a moisturizer that contains occlusives because a moisturizer contains already water and other humectants, which again, if you just would use those, then it still would basically erase the same problem if you have dry skin. Now let's look into the usage consideration. Now, hyaluronic acid can enhance drug penetration, an important consideration when designing a skincare regimen and designating the order in which products will be applied. For example, applying retinol after using a hyaluronic acid product could theoretically increase absorption of retinol. So there are certain points that I want to emphasize. The first one would be it always depends on the hyaluronic acid product that you're using. So if you're using a hyaluronic acid toner or serum, yes, you can apply those before applying your retinol serum or moisturizer, or like retinol cream basically. However, if you have a hyaluronic acid moisturizer that contains hyaluronic acid, maybe other humectants as well, including occlusives, which would seal it, then the order of application is going to change. Then you're going to apply your retinol at first and then your moisturizer with occlusives, including hyaluronic acid on top. So there, the order of application is changing. Another point that I want to emphasize is that yes, you can go ahead and apply two separate products, like at first your hyaluronic acid product and then retinol afterwards, so that you are getting a higher chance that retinol can penetrate much better into the skin. However, I believe that if you have a formulation where it contains already hyaluronic acid and retinol in one tube, then this can already happen within the formulation, and when applying it to the skin, then it can give you the same effect. So instead of using two different products, you're just using one, and it's giving you those benefits that hyaluronic acid can offer. Now, the last point that I want to emphasize is that the same would apply with any other humectant, the same would apply with just water. Because if you're going to apply your retinol, as in this example, to damp skin, then you will achieve the same results because it helps to increase the penetration of retinol in that specific sense, and with any other skincare ingredient as well. And so this is basically what I wanted to share with you in this specific book. Now I want to head into the claim that it binds over 1,000 times its weight in water, which is something that you often can hear specifically when looking up a skincare product that contains hyaluronic acid. So let's see how this is basically layered out. So let's look into this article right here, which is from New Directions Australia, and I'm going to leave the entire article in the description box down below because I want to keep my main focus on what I have highlighted. So right here it mentions that hyaluronic acid creates a frame like a fishing net. From this frame, hundreds if not thousands of water molecules can be anchored. So the hyaluronic acid does hold some water via direct bonds, but then relies on the natural tendency of water molecules to hold or attract a few more molecules of their own. And so via the direct bond basically refers to the 10 to 15 times its weight in water, which is way less than 1,000 times its weight in water. But because it also relies on the natural tendency of water molecules, it is able to hold on to more water molecules. It doesn't take long before a giant hyaluronic bound water gel is formed, and that's where the 1,000 times number comes from. And so overall, this should give us some background information on that specific claim that you often can see when looking into a hyaluronic acid product, so that you understand what's happening and to what it's referring to. This, however, leads me to the experiment that I found online, which is from this site right here. The author's name is Wendy, and she has done the experiment, and she wanted to know if hyaluronic acid holds up to 1,000 times its weight in water, and as you can see by the headline, not even close. I'm going to keep the main focus on what I have highlighted. You will find the entire article in the description box down below. Now, she mentioned that I found that hyaluronic acid does not hold 1,000 times its weight in water. I found that hyaluronic acid can only hold up to 50 times its weight in water. There is not an established way in literature to determine how much hyaluronic acid actually absorbs, which is why I could only give it an estimate of up to 50 times in my results. Hyaluronic acid forms a gel when saturated, but there is not a good way outlined in the literature to determine when that gel is fully saturated. So she had difficulties to really measure the outcome of it. So below you can see what she's trying to do based on the materials that she has been using, and below you can see the pictures on how she has done the experiment. But I want to keep my main focus towards those two pictures right here and what's written in between. So when the larger hyaluronic acid molecular weights was put into 50 times its weight in water, a semi-thick gel, hair gel consistency formed. However, this was not how hyaluronic acid is supposed to look when fully saturated, indicating it was not able to fully absorb the 50 times its weight in water. Therefore, I had to add less water to the mixture to determine hyaluronic acid saturation point. So here you can see her first experiment where it has like a slightly gel-like texture, whereas below you can see the same experiment, but the difference is she only used 10 times its weight in water. And here you can see that a very thick gel was formed, where she then could basically mention that this would be the saturation point. And so then you have the 10 to 50 times its weight in water, which again brings me back to the article earlier, which I have pointed out right here. But because hyaluronic acid does not only bind to water molecules, but it's also going to attract more water molecules to it, you have the 50 times in weight in water, which again is far less than 1,000 times its weight in water. Nonetheless, I want to keep my focus on the texture of this experiment right here, because this just reminded me so much on an hyaluronic acid serum. And I have one right here. You can see it has a similar texture. It's semi-thick. You still can spread it out on the skin, which is important if you have a cosmetic product. Otherwise, it wouldn't feel comfortable on the skin. And then there you have your hyaluronic acid. In that specific case, you could say it's maybe up to 50 times its weight in water based on the formulation. Now, what this basically has taught me is far more important than the experiment itself on how much water it can actually hold on to. It basically taught me the way on how I'm supposed to use my hyaluronic acid serum. Because, let's go through this together. If you have your hyaluronic acid serum at home, based on the experiment, it describes that the hyaluronic acid that is in the formulation is already fully saturated. Plus, the additional water that has been added to it has already bind with the hyaluronic acid and other water molecules. So overall, your hyaluronic acid is fully saturated. If you're going to add more water to it, it's not going to take it on because it can't. It has reached its limit where it would do this. Why is this important? Well, I often hear people telling me that hyaluronic acid needs to be applied to damp skin. Well, when I'm then asking what is your explanation to damp skin? How are you going to apply your hyaluronic acid serum? They often tell me that they're going to leave the water drops on the skin surface and then they're going to apply the hyaluronic acid on top. Well, if you're going to leave the water drops on the skin surface, this basically indicates to me that this is wet skin. This is not damp skin. So let me just break down the difference between damp and wet skin. So damp skin refers to, let's go with the cleansing step. You're washing your face with your cleanser and you're going to rinse it off. While you were washing your face with your cleanser, your skin was already able to absorb some water. And once you've rinsed off the cleanser, all the little water drops that you can see on the skin surface is basically the excess that the skin cannot absorb because it's already full. And so if you then are going to apply your hyaluronic acid on wet skin, all what this is going to create is a huge mess. The same would apply to this like misting spray right here. I often see people that they are going to mist their face at first and then they're going to apply hyaluronic acid on top. It's the same thing. You're going to wet the skin. And all what you are trying to reach is that you're going to dampen the skin. So damp skin and wet skin are completely different. You do not see any water drops on the skin surface. This is basically damp skin. So make sure that you're going to apply your hyaluronic acid on a dry or damp skin and then you won't come across any issues. If you're going to apply your hyaluronic acid on top of wet skin, doesn't matter how you've done it, either from the mist or your cleansing step, then you're going to create a mess because you're going to mix your hyaluronic acid that is already fully saturated with the excess water. This then starts to dry, feels tight on the skin or maybe extremely uncomfortable because it starts to become quite smeary. And then it can often lead to peeling. Now this can happen while you're blending your hyaluronic acid serum all over, or it happens when you're moving on to the next step and applying another skincare product on top. Or what you're going to do is you're going to rub off your hyaluronic acid because it wasn't able to some extent absorb into the skin. And because you have added more water to it than it actually needs because it was already fully saturated. So this is really a huge point that I'm trying to emphasize in the entire video. Please only apply your hyaluronic acid to either completely dry skin because it is already fully saturated with water or damp skin, but do not apply it on wet skin. Then another point that I want to emphasize is with dry skin. So from the book earlier, you could see with the humectants and hyaluronic acid as well, because it is a humectant, that if you have dry skin, you live in a low humidity area, that it is best to always follow with an occlusive afterwards, because if you're not going to do this, there is a potential that the hyaluronic acid is going to take the water from the deeper layers of the skin. Now this is something that I'm still questioning, because if your hyaluronic acid serum is already fully saturated, it cannot absorb more water. Why would it absorb the water from the deeper layers of the skin? So that's one point. The other point is that it still is important that if you have dry skin, you do not live in a humid area, that you need to follow with an occlusive afterwards, so that you can properly seal it, so that it's not going to evaporate. Otherwise, you're going to need to moist your skin all the time, because if you're not going to work work with an occlusive and you're living in a dry climate, that it's going to lose the hydration so quickly that you have to hydrate your skin ongoing. And so to prevent it from like disappearing, you're going to seal it with your occlusive so that it can hold on to this. And so there you can then basically keep the hydration within the skin, which if you have, again, oily skin, this is not necessary because your sebum is going to do this for you. Now there's one other point that I want to emphasize, and this is with the mist right here. This is just one example. I believe that back then, where the mists were really helping us, this was at a time where you only had maybe a soap to wash your face, then you had the mist to hydrate the skin, and then you had your petrolatum jelly. You didn't even have a moisturizer as we have nowadays, because if you're going to look into moisturizers nowadays, they already contain humectants, they already contain water, plus they already contain occlusives. So if you're working with a moisturizer, you actually do not need to hydrate your skin in any other way, because usually it contains already like all-in-one formulation. But back then it was different, where you only had your petrolatum jelly, let's go with Vaseline for example, and then you would apply it. If you did not add water to the skin before you're going to apply your petrolatum jelly, not much is going to change, because you had already dry skin and all what your skin is missing is hydration, and because it does not get the hydration, putting an occlusive on top does not make any difference. So this is where those sprays come in handy. You would mist your face as well as your neck, then you're giving your skin a moment so that it can to some extent absorb it into the skin. Then after a few minutes, anything that's left on the skin surface, the water drops that you can see on the skin surface, you would pad off and then apply your petrolatum jelly on top. This way, your skin was able to absorb the water that it needs, and then you're going to seal it with the petrolatum jelly so that it cannot basically disappear, evaporate again. And so this is basically the original idea of such a mist. So please, after you have washed your face, you have removed the remaining water drops from the skin surface, do not use a mist in between before applying your hyaluronic acid serum to the skin. Skip this step. Either wash your face and then remove the remaining water drops from the skin surface and then apply your hyaluronic acid serum on top, or throughout the day, if you have really dry skin, you want to repeat the same steps, then take the mist, dampen your skin, and then apply your moisturizer on top, or your hyaluronic acid on top, because you can have the same effects with other humectants. It doesn't have to be hyaluronic acid, and you can have the same effect with just plain water. And so this is basically my main message that I want to share with you, so that you have an overall understanding of where the information is coming from and what we can all learn from this experiment that I have shared with you, and my point of view to this as well. Now, of course, if you have anything else to add, you have further questions, you're disagreeing with me, that's completely fine. Just leave a comment down below and let's have an open discussion about it. This is just how I see how we are supposed to use hyaluronic acid, because there's no point in adding more water if it cannot do anything with it. You're all just going to create a mess with it. And so this is what I wanted to share with you. I do hope that you enjoyed this video, that you find it helpful. If you did so, please don't forget to give the thumbs up as well as share it. And I will see you soon in the next one. Happy skin caring. Bye.